Park stood at the observation window of the transport ship and watched the conclave station grow larger in the darkness of space. She had seen many impressive things in her 10 years as a human diplomat, but nothing compared to this. The station was massive, larger than Earth's moon, built by hundreds of alien species working together over thousands of years. Lights flickered across its surface like stars, each one representing a different civilization that called the galaxy home. "We're approaching Docking Bay 73, the pilot announced over the speaker. "Arrival in 15 minutes. Turned away from the window and checked her appearance in the reflective wall panel. Her diplomatic uniform was crisp and clean, the Earth insignia bright on her shoulder. She was 36 years old, and this was the most important assignment of her career. The entire Galactic Assembly had been called together for an emergency session. No one had told her exactly why, only that it was urgent and every species needed to send a representative. Behind her was checking his equipment. He was the leader of her security detail, a former Marine with sharp eyes and steady hands. He didn't like mysteries, and this whole situation made him nervous. "Do you think it's a war?" he asked quietly. Shook her head. "If it was war, they would have told us. This is something else." The ship docked with a gentle bump, gathered her data pad and walked toward the exit, and two other Marines followed close behind. The airlock opened and they stepped into chaos. The docking bay was filled with aliens. Had never seen so many different species in one place. There were the tall, crystalline who seemed to glow with their own light. The moved in precise formations, their armor clicking with each step. Floating gas clouds that were actually intelligent beings drifted past. Creatures with too many limbs or no limbs at all hurried toward the assembly chambers. A holographic guide appeared in front of Diplomat Park. "Welcome to Conclave Station. Please follow the green line to Assembly Chamber 1. The session begins in 1 hour." Followed the glowing green line on the floor. Around her, she heard dozens of languages being translated in real time by universal interpreters. Everyone seemed confused. No one knew why they were here. The assembly chamber was enormous. It could hold representatives from all 847 species that made up the Galactic Assembly. The seats were arranged in a massive circle, each one designed for the specific needs of different alien bodies. The human section was small, tucked between the Slug Collective and the Bird People. Humanity had only been part of the assembly for 40 years. They were considered a young species, barely worth noticing. Took her seat, positioned himself at the entrance to the human section, watching everything with careful eyes. The lights dimmed. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber, floating above them all. It showed an old alien, whose crystalline body had turned a deep purple with age. This was High Consul, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Representatives of the Assembly's voice echoed through the chamber. 3 cycles ago, an archaeological team discovered something on the dead world of Terminus 7, something that changes everything we thought we knew about the galaxy." The hologram shifted. Now it showed a planet, gray and lifeless, spinning slowly in space. Then it zoomed down to the surface, into a massive temple made of some kind of crystalline material that seemed to shift and change even as watched it. At the center of the temple sat a throne. But it wasn't an ordinary throne. It seemed to be made of captured starlight, glowing with colors that had never seen before. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The entire chamber fell silent as they stared at it. "This is the seat of the predecessors," continued. "We have found records indicating it is over 4 billion years old. It was created by a species that existed before any of us, before any civilization we know of. The predecessors disappeared long ago, but they left this behind." A murmur ran through the assembly. The predecessors were legend, myth. Most species didn't believe they had ever existed. "For the past 3,000 years," said, "various expeditions have found this temple and attempted to claim the seat. All have failed. Some were simply rejected. Others died in the attempt. The seat responds to no one. It has sat empty for billions of years, waiting. The hologram zoomed in closer on the throne, leaned forward in her seat, studying it carefully. There was something about it that drew her attention, something she couldn't quite name. The Council has decided that each species will be given one chance to approach the seat, announced. We will travel to Terminus 7 in order of galactic seniority. The oldest civilizations will attempt first. Perhaps one of us is meant to inherit what the predecessors left behind. The chamber erupted into argument. The demanded priority access. The collective claimed the temple was in their territory and therefore belonged to them. Smaller species protested that the selection method favored the ancient civilizations and gave them no fair chance. Barely heard any of it. She was still staring at the hologram of the seat. As she watched, something strange happened. The image flickered. For just a moment, the throne seemed to shift, turning slightly in her direction. It was so quick that wasn't sure she had really seen it. She looked around to see if anyone else had noticed. Was watching the arguing aliens. The other representatives were focused on the debate. No one seemed to have seen what she saw. The hologram flickered again. This time was sure. The seat had definitely moved and it was facing her direction. A chill ran down her spine. She told herself it was just a glitch in the projection, nothing more. But deep inside she knew that wasn't true. Somehow, across the vast distance of space, something ancient and powerful had noticed her. The assembly voted. They would travel to Terminus 7 beginning the next day. Each species would send one representative to attempt to claim the seat. They would go in order from the oldest civilizations to the youngest. Humanity, as species number 782, would have to wait a long time for their turn. As the session ended and the aliens began filing out of the chamber, remained in her seat. She looked up at the hologram one more time. The seat glowed in the darkness, patient and waiting, as it had waited for billions of years. "Are you coming?" asked from the doorway. Stood up slowly. "Yes," she said, "I just needed a moment." But as she walked toward the exit, she couldn't shake the feeling that her moment had already begun, whether she was ready for it or not. The planet Terminus 7 looked dead from orbit. Its surface was gray and cracked, with no water, no atmosphere, and no signs of life. Stared down at it from the window of the human transport ship and wondered how anything could have survived there long enough to build a temple. "It wasn't always like this," said, coming to stand beside her. He was one of Earth's best experts on ancient alien civilizations. He had been studying the Terminus 7 site for the past month, ever since the discovery was announced. 4 billion years ago, this was a living world. Oceans, forests, everything. But the star it orbits went through a phase change and burned away the atmosphere. Everything died. "Except the temple," said. "Except the temple," agreed. "Whatever the predecessors built it from, it's completely indestructible. We've tried scanning it with every instrument we have. The material doesn't match anything in our databases. It shouldn't exist." Below them, hundreds of ships from different species were taking up positions around the planet. The assembly had organized everything carefully. Each day, 10 species would send their representatives down to attempt the seat. The order had been determined by how long each species had been part of galactic civilization. The oldest known species at 12 million years would go first. Assistant Han appeared in the doorway. She was young, only 25, but brilliant with languages. She had already learned 17 alien languages and was working on her 18th. "The first group is heading down now," said. "We can watch on the live broadcast." They moved to the common room where a large screen showed the view from cameras inside the temple. Sat down, watching carefully. Stood behind her, arms crossed. The temple interior was vast. The walls were made of the same crystalline material as the exterior, but inside they seemed to glow with a soft light. The architecture was strange. The hallways and chambers were sized for beings about as tall as humans, which seemed odd since most of the older species were either much larger or much smaller. At the center of the main chamber sat the seat. In person, without the hologram filter, it was even more magnificent. It pulsed with light, colors shifting across its surface like auroras. The air around it seemed to shimmer and bend. The first representative approached. It was a matriarch, her crystalline body glowing with ancient power. She had lived for 8 million years and had seen entire civilizations rise and fall. If anyone deserved to claim the seat, it would be her. She walked forward slowly, respectfully. When she was 10 meters from the seat, the air around it suddenly hardened. It became a wall of solid force that she could not pass through. She tried for several minutes, using all her strength, but the barrier would not yield. Finally, she stepped back and bowed her head in acceptance. "The seat rejects the announcer said. One by one, the ancient species made their attempts. The collective tried to merge with the seat, surrounding it with their slug-like bodies, but were gently pushed away. The Empire sent their greatest warrior, who was thrown back before he could get within 20 meters. They attempted a telepathic connection and collapsed screaming, though they survived. Then came the Dominion's turn. They were an aggressive species, warriors who believed in taking what they wanted by force. Their champion was a massive creature covered in black armor, carrying weapons that could level cities. He approached the seat with arrogance, not respect. He did not bow. He did not ask permission. He simply walked forward as if the seat belonged to him already. When he was 5 meters away, the seat flashed red. The light was so bright that the cameras temporarily went dark. When the image returned, the champion was gone, not thrown back, not pushed away, simply gone, reduced to atoms in an instant. The chamber fell silent. No more species approached with arrogance after that. Days passed. Hundreds of species made their attempts. Some were rejected gently. Some were tested and found wanting. A few died, though most were smart enough to retreat when the seat showed signs of danger, but none were accepted. The seat remained empty. Finally, on the 7th day, it was humanity's turn. There were only 65 species left who had not yet tried. Humanity was number 782 out of 847. They were young, barely noticed, and no one expected anything from them. Prepared to go down to the surface. She wore simple clothes, not her diplomatic uniform. Had advised her that the seat seemed to prefer humility over displays of power. "Remember," he said as she prepared to board the shuttle, "the temple architecture is sized for someone about your height. That might mean something." "Or it might mean nothing," replied. "The predecessors are gone. We don't know what they wanted." "Just be careful," said. He wanted to go with her, but only one representative per species was allowed in the temple chamber. The shuttle descended through the dead planet's airless sky, wore a protective suit that provided her with air and shielded her from radiation. She could see the temple from above, a massive structure that seemed to grow out of the planet's surface like a crystal flower. She landed at the designated platform and walked alone toward the entrance. The temple doors were already open. They had been open for 4 billion years, waiting. Inside, the air was breathable. The temple created its own atmosphere, another impossible thing. Removed her helmet and breathed in air that should not exist. It tasted clean and fresh, like a spring morning on Earth. She walked through the corridors, following the path that hundreds of aliens had walked before her. The walls glowed gently, lighting her way. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Then she entered the main chamber and saw the seat. All the holographic projections, all the recordings, none of them had captured what it was really like. The seat was alive, or at least it seemed to be. Light flowed across its surface like water. Colors that had no names shifted and changed. The air around it hummed with power, a sound that felt in her bones rather than heard with her ears. She stood at the chamber entrance, suddenly afraid. Every instinct told her to run, to leave this place and never return. But she had come this far. She was representing all of humanity. She could not run. Took a step forward, then another. The seat did not react. She kept walking, slowly and carefully, expecting at any moment to hit an invisible wall or be thrown back or worse. But nothing happened. She crossed the 10-meter mark where the matriarch had been stopped. She crossed the 5-meter mark where the champion had died. She kept walking until she was standing right in front of the seat, so close she could have reached out and touched it. And then it moved. Not much, just a slight shift, a turning as if it were adjusting itself to face her more directly. But everyone watching saw it. Every camera recorded it. The seat, which had rejected or destroyed hundreds of representatives from hundreds of species, had moved toward the human. His heart pounded in her chest. She could hear gasps and shouts coming from her communication device, the observers watching from orbit reacting to what they were seeing. But she ignored them. She was focused entirely on the seat. It was beautiful up close, terrible and beautiful at the same time. She could see patterns in the light, equations and formulas that were beyond her understanding. She could feel the age of it, the weight of billions of years. And then, without planning to, without knowing why, spoke. "Why me?" she asked the ancient throne. "What are you?" The seat pulsed with light. The entire temple shook, and somewhere deep in its ancient systems, something that had been sleeping for 4 billion years began to wake up. The temple came alive around. The walls that had glowed softly before now blazed with light. The floor beneath her feet vibrated with power. The seat pulsed in response to her question, its colors shifting faster and faster until they became a blur. Took a step back, frightened. What's happening? Her communication device crackled with voices from orbit, was shouting something about energy readings going off the charts, was demanding she get out of there immediately. But before could move, the light from the seat expanded outward and surrounded her. She should have been afraid. She should have run. But the light was warm and gentle, and somehow she knew it would not hurt her. It lifted her off her feet, holding her suspended in the air, and then images began to appear around her. They were holographic recordings, ancient beyond measure. The first image showed a planet, green and blue and beautiful, covered with oceans and continents. Cities made of the same crystalline material as the temple dotted the surface. Ships moved between the stars. This was a civilization at its peak, advanced and powerful. Then the image shifted to show the people who had built it all. His breath caught in her throat. They looked almost human. Not exactly the same, but close enough that they could have walked down a street on Earth without drawing too much attention. 2 arms, 2 legs, bipedal, with faces that showed emotion and intelligence. The predecessors were not strange or alien. They were familiar. "Impossible," whispered. The holographic recording continued. It showed the predecessors at work, building ships that could cross galaxies, creating technology that seemed like magic. They had mastered the laws of physics and bent them to their will. They had lived for thousands of years and explored every corner of the known universe. But then the images grew sad. The predecessors were alone. In all their searching, they had found no other intelligent life. The galaxy was empty except for them. They had all this power, all this knowledge, and no one to share it with. So they made a decision. They would seed life across the galaxy. They would create the conditions for intelligence to evolve on thousands of different worlds. But they would not control that evolution. They would not force it to be like them. Each world would develop in its own way, creating its own unique form of life. The holographic recording showed the predecessors at work across millions of years. They adjusted planetary conditions here, introduced basic organisms there, nudged evolution in interesting directions. They were gardeners on a galactic scale, planting seeds and waiting to see what would grow. And then, when their work was done, the recording showed them building the seat. This was to be their legacy, their final gift. It would wait for the species that proved worthy, the ones who best embodied what the predecessors had valued: Adaptability, curiosity, the capacity for both creation and destruction, the ability to feel deep emotions while still thinking rationally. The seat was a test. Every species that approached it was measured against an impossible standard. Most fell short. Some came close but still lacked something essential. And a few, like the champion, failed so completely that the seat destroyed them to protect itself. Then the recording showed something that made its heart race. It showed Earth. 4 billion years ago, the predecessors had visited Earth. They had found it perfect for their purposes, a world with the right gravity, the right distance from its star, the right chemical composition. But they had not planned for complex life to evolve there for at least another million years. Earth was meant to be a control world, a baseline to compare against other experiments. But something unexpected happened. An asteroid impact, a shift in ocean currents, random chance, or perhaps something else entirely. Evolution on Earth accelerated beyond what the predecessors had predicted. Life became complex faster than it should have. Intelligence emerged in humans far ahead of schedule. By the time the predecessors realized what was happening, it was too late. They were already gone. Their civilization ended not by war or catastrophe, but by choice. They had evolved beyond physical form, transcending into something else, something that the recording could not properly show. They left behind only their works, the seated worlds, the temples, and the seat. The recording ended. The light around faded, and she was gently lowered back to the floor. She stood there shaking, trying to process what she had seen. His voice crackled over her communicator. "What happened? We saw the energy surge but couldn't see anything else. Are you okay?" She touched her communicator with trembling fingers. "I'm fine. The seat showed me a recording. The predecessors looked like us. They seeded life across the galaxy. They created the conditions for all the other species to evolve." There was silence on the other end, then his voice confused. "They created everyone, even the—" "Not created directly," tried to explain. "They set up the conditions. They gave evolution a push in the right direction. Every species in the assembly exists because of what the predecessors did billions of years ago." More voices joined the conversation now, aliens who had been listening to the transmission. The matriarch spoke, her voice cold. "This is impossible. My people have existed for 12 million years. We evolved naturally on our. There is no evidence of outside interference." "The predecessors worked on a timescale of billions of years," said. "They didn't interfere directly. They just made sure the right conditions existed." A commander's voice cut in, harsh and angry. "And they chose you, humans, a species barely 40 years in the assembly. This is a lie designed to give humans power they do not deserve." Looked at the seat. It had stopped pulsing and now sat quietly, waiting. "I don't think they chose humans specifically. I think we're an accident. We weren't supposed to exist yet. We evolved too fast." "Then why does the seat respond to you?" the matriarch demanded. That was the question had been asking herself. The recording had shown the predecessors' criteria for their inheritors. They wanted a species that was adaptable, curious, capable of complex emotions, able to create and destroy. Humanity fit those criteria, but so did other species. They were certainly capable of destruction. They had shown great curiosity in their explorations. They felt emotions deeply. But there was one image in the recording that couldn't forget. The predecessors themselves, standing together, looking so much like humans. Not identical, but close. Much closer than any other species in the galaxy. "Because we look like them," said quietly. "Not on purpose, just by chance. Earth was never supposed to develop intelligent life this early, but it did. And when it did, that life evolved to look similar to the predecessors. The seat recognizes that similarity." "Physical appearance cannot be the only criterion," the matriarch said. "That would be absurd." "It's not," agreed. "But it might be the tiebreaker. Maybe other species came close to meeting the predecessors' standards, but we look like them too, and that makes the difference." The commander's voice was like ice. "I do not accept this. Your species is young and weak. You have no right to claim the predecessor's legacy." "I'm not claiming anything," protested. "I'm just telling you what I saw." "You lie to gain power over us," the said. "The Assembly will not allow this. We demand that you step away from the seat immediately." His voice came through urgently. "We're picking up weapons signatures. Multiple ships are powering up their offensive systems. I think they're going to attack the temple." Looked around the chamber at the ancient walls that had stood for 4 billion years. She looked at the seat, still waiting patiently. She thought about the predecessors and their grand experiment, seeding life across the galaxy and then leaving it to grow on its own. What would they think if they could see what was happening now? Would they be proud that their creations had developed into so many different forms of intelligent life? Or would they be disappointed that those creations were ready to kill each other over a throne that none of them truly understood? His voice came through the communicator, calm despite the danger. "You need to make a choice. Stay there and claim the seat, or leave now before shooting starts." Closed her eyes. The weight of 4 billion years pressed down on her. The hopes of humanity, the anger of the other species, the judgment of history all waited for her decision. She was just one person, one diplomat who had never wanted this kind of responsibility. But the seat had chosen to respond to her. She was the one standing in this chamber. The choice was hers to make. She opened her eyes and looked at the seat once more. "What happens if I sit down?" she asked it. The seat pulsed once, a gentle wave of light as if answering. In that pulse felt something. A whisper of knowledge, a hint of power, a promise of change. If she sat on that throne, she would activate it fully. The predecessor's technology, sleeping for billions of years across the galaxy, would wake up. Humanity would have access to weapons and tools that could reshape civilization itself. And that would start a war that could destroy everyone. The first warning shot hit the planet's surface 3 kilometers from the temple. The ground shook, and dust that had lain undisturbed for millions of years rose into the airless sky. Stumbled but caught herself against a crystal pillar. "Get out of there now," shouted through the communicator. "The fleet is taking position. They're going to destroy the temple." Looked at the seat one more time, then turned and ran. She raced through the crystal corridors as more weapons fire struck the planet around her. The temple shook but did not break. Whatever material it was made from, it was holding against the assault. She reached her shuttle and threw herself inside. The door sealed behind her, and she punched the launch command. The small ship lifted off just as a massive energy beam struck where it had been parked. The blast melted the landing platform into glass. "I'm clear of the surface," gasped into the communicator. "What's happening up there?" His voice came back, tense with worry. "It's chaos. They are demanding the temple be destroyed. They say humanity cannot be allowed to claim the predecessor's technology, but the collective is blocking them. They say the temple is too valuable to destroy, that it should be studied by everyone. So they are on our side." "Not exactly," cut in. "They just don't want them to make the decision alone. Meanwhile, about half the other species are mobilizing their ships. Some support the, some are just preparing to defend themselves. Everyone's afraid this is going to turn into a shooting war." Shuttle climbed toward orbit. Below her, the temple continued to glow peacefully on the dead planet's surface, unchanged despite the weapon's fire striking around it. She could see the seat through the shuttle's sensors, still waiting at the center of the structure. A human ship appeared beside her, the Steadfast, commanded by Captain. His face appeared on her screen, young and serious. "Diplomat Park, I'm escorting you back to the human fleet position," said. "It's not safe out here alone." "Thank you, Captain." As they flew, watched the situation develop. Ships from dozens of species were taking up battle positions. They had formed a blockade around Terminus 7. No one else would be allowed to approach the planet. They were broadcasting demands that the temple be handed over to neutral parties for study, or better yet, destroyed entirely. The Steadfast brought back to the main human ship, where was waiting at the airlock. His face was tight with concern. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No, I'm fine," removed her helmet and breathed the ship's air. "But we have a bigger problem." He led her to the conference room where, and several other human officials were gathered. They all turned to look at her as she entered. "Tell us everything," said. "What did the seat show you?" Explained the holographic recording, the history of the predecessors, and the reason the seat had responded to her. When she finished, the room was silent. Finally, an older woman named Song spoke up. She was Earth's cultural, responsible for managing relationships between humans and other species. "If what you're saying is true, this could tear the assembly apart. Every species believes they evolved naturally, that they earned their place in the galaxy through their own efforts. To learn they were all part of someone else's experiment." "It's been 4 billion years," said. "Does it really matter?" "It matters if the seat gives humans access to predecessor technology," replied. "Think about it. We're already seen as young and aggressive. If we suddenly have weapons and tools far beyond anyone else, every species in the galaxy will see us as a threat." "They already do," said bitterly. "Did you see how fast the move to blockade the planet? They're not going to let us claim the seat no matter what we do." Had been standing silently by the wall. Now he spoke. "So what are our options? Walk away and let them destroy the temple, let them take it for themselves, or fight for what the seat chose to give us?" The room fell silent again. Those were the choices laid out starkly. None of them were good. Moved to the window and looked out at the gathered fleets. Hundreds of ships, thousands of weapons, all focused on a single dead planet and the temple that sat on its surface. 4 billion years ago, the predecessors had seeded life across the galaxy, hoping it would grow into something beautiful. Now those different life forms were ready to kill each other over the legacy that had been left behind. "There has to be another way," she said quietly. "What way?" asked. "I know you want to find a peaceful solution, but look at what's happening out there. They have always been aggressive. The collective values knowledge above everything else. The assembly is fractured. If we don't act, someone else will, and it might not be someone we trust." A communication came through. It was the matriarch requesting to speak with directly. Everyone in the room tensed but accepted the call. The ancient alien's crystalline face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, which was strange. Had never thought of the as capable of tiredness before. "Diplomat Park," the matriarch said. "I have studied the sensor readings from your time in the temple. The energy patterns match descriptions in our oldest records, stories we thought were myths. I believe your account of what the seat showed you is accurate." "Thank you," said carefully. "However," the matriarch continued, "believing and accepting are different things. If humans claim the seat, it will cause war. Too many species will not tolerate your access to predecessor technology. They are not alone in their concerns." "What do you suggest?" The matriarch was quiet for a moment. "Destroy it. Destroy the seat, the temple, everything. It is better to lose the knowledge than to fight a war that could destroy us all." Felt her heart sink. "That's one option, what's another?" "There is no other option that ends peacefully," the matriarch said, "unless you can convince the entire assembly to trust humanity with power beyond their understanding. And I do not believe that is possible." The communication ended, turned back to her team. They were all watching her, waiting for her to decide. "She's right," said softly. "We could destroy the seat, use it to avoid war, that might be the choice. Or we could claim it," argued. "Activate the seat fully and take what the predecessors meant us to have. Show everyone that humanity deserves respect." "That's pride talking," shot back. "We'd be starting a war that could kill billions, all because we're too arrogant to walk away." They started arguing, voices rising. remained silent but could see his hand resting on his weapon. He was a soldier. If fighting started, he would fight. But she knew he didn't want it to come to that. Moved closer to. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. Didn't answer. She was thinking about the recording she had seen, about the predecessors and their grand experiment. They had seeded life across the galaxy and then left, trusting it to grow on its own. They hadn't stayed to control it or direct it. They had given their creation freedom. And freedom meant the freedom to make mistakes, to fight to fail. But it also meant the freedom to choose something better. An idea was forming in his mind. It was risky, possibly foolish, and would require every species in the assembly to agree. But it might be the only way to avoid war while still honoring what the predecessors had left behind. "I need to get back to the temple," she said suddenly. Everyone stopped arguing and stared at her. "Are you crazy?" demanded. "We'll shoot you down before you get anywhere near the surface." "Not if I broadcast what I'm doing on every channel," said. "Not if I make it clear I'm not going to claim the seat for myself." "Then what are you going to do?" asked. Looked at each of them in turn. "I'm going to propose a different kind of inheritance, one that the predecessors might actually have wanted." Stepped forward. "If you're going down there, I'm coming with you." "No," said firmly. "Only one representative per species, remember. Besides, I need you here. If this doesn't work, if the attack anyway, then humanity will need every defender they have." She could see he wanted to argue, but he nodded slowly. "Whatever you choose, we'll support you." Smiled at him, grateful. Then she turned to. "I need you to send a message to every ship in the system. Tell them I'm returning to the temple. Tell them I have a proposal that might satisfy everyone. Tell them to hold fire until they hear what I have to say." "They won't listen," said. "They might," replied. "If they're curious enough, if they want to avoid war badly enough, we have to try." She headed for the airlock. Behind her, she could hear already composing the message, was calculating optimal broadcast frequencies, was preparing diplomatic protocols. They were all doing their jobs, trusting her to do hers. Climbed back into her shuttle. Through the window, she could see the blockade, their weapons charged and ready. She could see the collective ships, holding position but prepared for battle. She could see hundreds of other vessels, all waiting to see what would happen next. She took a deep breath and launched the shuttle toward Terminus 7, toward the temple that had waited 4 billion years, toward a choice that would change everything. The shuttle descended through a storm of sensor locks. Dozens of weapons tracked its trajectory, ready to fire at any moment. But its message had reached the fleets. They were holding their fire, waiting to hear what she would say. Landed at the temple again. The melted glass from the earlier attack crunched under her feet as she walked toward the entrance. Her hands shook slightly, but she forced them to be steady. Every species in the system was watching her now through remote cameras. Every word she said would be broadcast across the galaxy. She entered the temple and walked to the main chamber. The seat was there, exactly as she had left it, glowing softly in the crystalline space. It shifted slightly as she approached, acknowledging her presence. Stopped in front of it and took a deep breath. Then she spoke, knowing her words were being transmitted everywhere. "My name is Park," she began. "I am a human diplomat, and I speak not just for my species but for everyone watching. The seat of the predecessors has shown me its history. I know now why it was built and what it represents, and I believe I know what we should do with it." She paused, gathering her thoughts. The seat pulsed gently, as if encouraging her to continue. "The predecessors seeded life across this galaxy 4 billion years ago. They created the conditions for all of us to evolve, every species here. They did this because they were alone and wanted the universe to be filled with intelligence and diversity. When their work was done, they left. They didn't stay to control us or direct us. They gave us freedom." Gestured to the seat. This was meant to be their legacy, a test to see which species had developed the qualities they valued most. But I think there was a flaw in their design. They assumed one species would prove worthy. They assumed their inheritor would be singular. She could see confused reactions on the monitor feeds from the various ships. The matriarch looked intrigued. The commander seemed angry, but he was listening. The seat responded to me because humans happen to evolve in a way similar to the predecessors, continued. We look like them. We think in similar patterns, but that doesn't make us better than anyone else. They have shown incredible adaptability in surviving on hostile worlds. They have demonstrated curiosity by exploring for 12 million years. They have emotional depth that humans can barely imagine. Every species here has something the predecessors valued. She turned to face the seat directly. So here is my proposal. The seat stays here on this temple on this planet, but it doesn't belong to any one species. It belongs to all of us. The chamber erupted with transmitted voices. Species were arguing, questioning, demanding clarification. Raised her hand, asking for silence. The temple becomes neutral ground, she said. A place where every species can send researchers, scholars, diplomats. We study it together. We learn from it together. The knowledge the predecessors left behind isn't claimed by one species but shared by all. Impossible, the commander's voice boomed through the transmission. Species cannot be trusted to share such power equally. It will lead to theft, to conflict, to war. It might, admitted. But what's the alternative? We fight over it now and definitely have war. We destroy it and lose everything the predecessors built. Or we try something different. We honor their memory by doing what they did, creating something together instead of taking it for ourselves alone. The matriarch spoke, her voice thoughtful. You propose a cooperative council to oversee the temple and its study. Yes, said. Every species that wants to participate can send representatives. Decisions are made by consensus. No single species has control. The seat remains inactive unless we all agree to activate it. And if we never agree, someone asked from one of the smaller species ships. Then it stays inactive, replied. Maybe that's what the predecessors really wanted. Not for one species to claim ultimate power, but for all species to learn that some things are more important than individual ambition. She turned back to the seat. I could activate this right now. I could sit here and claim everything the predecessors left behind. The seat would respond to me. I know it would. But what kind of inheritor would I be if I started my inheritance by causing war? What would the predecessors think if they saw us destroying each other over their gift? The seat pulsed brighter, as if responding to her words. Walked closer to it, so close she could have touched it. I choose to leave it inactive. I choose to make this a place of cooperation instead of conquest. If that means I'm not worthy of being an inheritor, then so be it. But I think it means I understand what inheritance really is. It's not about taking. It's about protecting and sharing what we've been given. For a long moment, no one spoke. The various species ships hung in space, their weapons still charged but not firing, stood before the seat, her hand raised but not touching it. Then the commander spoke, and his voice was different. Still hard, still proud, but with something else underneath. Respect, maybe, or at least consideration. You would give up power to avoid war. Yes, said simply. Even though my people fired on you. Even though we would have destroyed this place. Yes, because this is bigger than one attack, one threat. This is about what kind of galaxy we want to have. There was another long pause. Then, surprisingly, the commander said, I will bring your proposal to my superiors. I do not promise they will accept it, but I will present it fairly. Other voices joined in. The matriarch agreed to consider it. Smaller species expressed support. Some were still skeptical, still angry, but they were willing to talk instead of shoot. Step back from the seat. Then let's talk. Let's figure out together how to protect this legacy. Let's prove that we're worthy of what the predecessors left behind by being better than they expected us to be. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the seat glowing behind her. It did not try to stop her. It did not call her back. It simply sat there, patient and waiting, as it had waited for billions of years. 6 months passed. The conclave station hosted endless meetings as species argued over how to manage the temple. Some wanted strict controls, others wanted open access. Compromises were made, agreements were written and rewritten. It was slow, frustrating work. But it was work, not war. Was no longer just a diplomat. She was humanity's representative to the predecessor council, as the new organization came to be called. 127 species had joined so far. More were considering it. They had sent observers, though they hadn't officially joined yet. The temple remained neutral ground. Research teams from different species worked side by side, studying the crystalline walls and the ancient systems. They were learning slowly about the technology the predecessors had left behind. But they were learning together, sharing discoveries instead of hoarding them. Stood in her office on the conclave station, looking at reports from Terminus 7. Had made an interesting discovery about the temple's power systems. Had translated another section of the ancient language. Even the researchers had contributed, finding patterns in the seat's energy emissions that no one else had noticed. Entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to, "You look tired." "I am tired," she admitted. "This job is harder than I thought it would be. Getting 847 species to agree on anything is like herding cats. Very large, very opinionated cats with weapons." He smiled. "But you're doing it." "We're doing it," she corrected. "It's not just me, it's everyone who chose to try instead of fight." Her communication terminal chimed. She accepted the call, and an excited face appeared on the screen. "You need to see this," he said. "We've been monitoring the seat's energy patterns for the past 6 months. It's been doing something subtle, something we almost missed." "What?" "It's been shifting, not physically but energetically. Small changes in its frequency, in how it pulses. And yesterday, we detected it shifting toward one of the research stations." Felt her heart skip. "What does that mean?" Grinned. "It means the seat isn't just keyed to humans. It's been watching all of us, learning from our cooperation. And now it's starting to respond to other species too. Specifically, to a young scientist named who's been working on understanding predecessor mathematics. The seat shifted toward her just like it shifted toward you." Sat down slowly. "So it wasn't about one species after all." "Maybe it never was," said. "Maybe the predecessors wanted to see if we could learn to work together. Maybe that was the real test." After the call ended, stood at her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the predecessors had transcended physical form and moved on to whatever came next. They had left behind their creation, their seeded galaxy full of diverse life. And now that creation was learning, slowly and imperfectly, to share instead of fight, to cooperate instead of conquer, to see inheritance not as something to claim alone but as something to protect together. The seat still sat in its temple, glowing patiently. It was responding to humans, yes, but also to scientists and philosophers and poets and dozens of other species who approached it with curiosity and respect instead of greed and ambition. Perhaps inheritance was never about one species claiming power. Perhaps it was about all species learning to share it. Smiled and took a sip of her coffee. There was still so much work to do, so many arguments to mediate, so many compromises to forge. They were still suspicious. The collective still wanted more control. The smaller species still worried about being marginalized. But they were talking. They were trying. And that was something the predecessors would never have seen before they disappeared, their scattered creation coming together, not as one unified species, but as hundreds of different voices learning to sing in harmony. Appeared beside her at the window. Message from Terminus 7. "The scientist is asking if she can speak with you. She has questions about your experience with the seat." "Tell her yes," said. "I'll answer whatever she wants to know." Because that was what inheritors did. They didn't hoard knowledge. They shared it, so the next person could learn and grow and maybe move the galaxy one step closer to becoming something the predecessors would have been proud to see. Outside the window, ships from 100 different species moved through the darkness, traveling to and from the temple where the seat waited. The galaxy was learning a new way to be. It would take time, maybe generations or even. But time was something they had. The seat had waited 4 billion years. It could wait a little longer while they figured out how to be worthy of the gift they'd been given. Not through conquest or control, but through cooperation and shared purpose. Perhaps that had been the test all along.